Hello and welcome to the MB Om podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Has your yoga studio's growth become stagnant? If you're like many studio owners I talk to, you've tried every marketing tactic under the sun. You started a blog, you're posting regularly on all social media sites, running challenges, sending out newsletters, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, you're doing a ton of work and barely paying the bills. What if there was an easier way? A way to get new students regularly coming through your door without having to do so much work to get them there. A proven system that will consistently bring in 20 plus new paying students to your studio each and every month. Well, there is. Ron Medlin and his team at GetYogaStudents.com have developed a 3-step system that will help you quickly grow your yoga studio to a 6-figure profits and beyond without being shackled to your business. So if you're ready to grow fast and you'd like the blueprint to help get you started, visit www.getYogaStudents.com today to get the exact system Ron and his team use to help his yoga studio clients add 10, 20, or even 30 new students every single month. The best part is that when you head on over to GetYogaStudents.com, you can sign up for a complimentary 45-minute consulting session with Ron or someone from his team to actually talk this through and make sure that it feels right for you. So check it out. Let me know what you think. And I'm super excited to see more growth within your yoga studio and business. All right. Welcome back for another episode of the MBOM podcast. I'm really excited that you've decided to join me for today's episode of the show because we have a really great episode with Peter Akkies from No More Newsletters. Peter helps yoga studios sell more memberships and delight their students by automating their email marketing. So on today's episode, we're talking about why the traditional sort of email newsletter doesn't always work, how we can switch our mindset to sending emails as opposed to newsletters. And he'll, give the difference within this if you're feeling a little bit confused already. We talk about, how to write great emails that are going to attract our clients, what automated emails we should be sending, and a whole lot more. Before we hear from Peter, though, we've got this week's Schedulicity hot tip of the week.
Hello, yoga business badasses. This is Blake with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. If you don't have a website, your Schedulicity account includes a business listing page where you can show off your services, classes, workshops, and business information. You can choose when you're ready to make your business listing public, so it will stay hidden while you're still getting set up. You can control whether or not your clients are allowed to book their appointments online, and you'll appear in Schedulicity's search results when your listing is public. If you already have your own website, you can copy and paste the code for our booking widget and allow your clients to book online without navigating away from your page. Having a strong internet presence helps take your business to the next level.
And as always, thank you so much to Schedulicity for supporting the podcast. Thank you to you guys for checking them out, asking questions, engaging, all that good stuff. Make sure you head on over to Schedulicity.com if you have any questions or you want to start your account, or reach out to them at support@Schedulicity.com. Their team is seriously a group of rock stars. They're so helpful. They're so responsive. So if you have any questions at all, just make sure that you're reaching out and asking those questions. Amazing. Now on to the episode with Peter. Peter, welcome to the podcast today. I'm super excited to be chatting with you.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Where are you joining me from today?
I am in Amsterdam.
Amazing. That's so cool. I love Amsterdam. It's such a dynamic city. There's so much beautiful scenery, museums, interesting nightlife, so much good stuff there.
And you can bike around.
Yeah. I think I almost got hit by multiple bikes when I was there the first time.
Okay. I wouldn't recommend that.
Definitely not. I'm super excited about our conversation today, and I know we're going to dive into some really good stuff around newsletters and kind of alternatives and that sort of thing, but I was wondering if we could back up a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and sort of your background with yoga?
Sure. So my name is Peter Akkies. I run the business called No More Newsletters, but we'll get there in a bit. I have a background as a corporate consultant. So after I graduated college in the US, I went into what's called economic consulting or litigation consulting. which is just a fancy way of saying that you help big companies who are suing each other, save money or make more money depending on which side they're on. And so I worked in corporate for a few years, and my first introduction to yoga was one of my coworkers there said, "Oh, I'm pretty stressed from having worked so hard, but I got this thing called Class Pass. You can try out lots of different fitness classes for one flat membership fee per month. I'm going to a yoga class tonight. Do you want to come?" I said, "Oh, sure." So I went to a yoga class, and it was incredibly relaxing. And having worked in consulting or working in consulting at the time, I definitely faced my share of stress, and that was my introduction to yoga. That was just a perfect way to leave work behind for a little bit. That's how I first started attending yoga classes.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can definitely resonate with that as well. Like working in corporate and just having that hour or even 45 minutes, whatever it is, to just be on your mat and be like completely in silence and get some clarity on like everything that's kind of stressing you out in life is like so amazing when you're just busy and working all the time. So I definitely resonate with that. And so you're consulting and then you start practicing yoga. What was it that kind of like drew you into wanting to work with yoga teachers and yoga studios?
Yeah, that story is a little longer. So what happened is I ended up burning out completely from my consulting job, which I'm not the only person who had that experience. It's definitely a thing that happens to a lot of people, especially people who work sort of in the higher end consulting jobs where there's long hours, right? A high pressure environment, stakes are high, and then so when I was dealing with burnout, I started attending yoga classes much more regularly because it really helped me recover and de-stress. And then sometime later, I said, you know what? I've always wanted to start my own business. So let's see if I can do that, if I can come up with some business ideas. And then one day, just suddenly it hit me. I was like, you know what? I know how to do email marketing. I've done this for other people in the past. I really enjoy going to yoga classes. Why don't I see if I can go help yoga studios with their email marketing? Because frankly, I think there's some opportunities for improvement there. And it just sort of struck me out of the blue. And I ran with it, contacted my local yoga studio, the one that I was attending classes at. And I was like, hey guys, can I help you with this, with your email marketing? So I can get some experience in exchange for a testimonial. That's often how you have to start your business, right? If you don't have any prior customers in that niche. And it kind of all grew from there. That's a couple of years ago now, but that's how it started.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love those ideas that kind of just like come to you like out of nowhere. You're like, where did that come from? This is interesting.
Yeah, and especially when you don't try, right? A lot of people will try very hard to come up with a business idea, and sort of I did the same thing. I'm like grabbing a pen and paper and I start brainstorming, but no good ideas come from that. It's just whenever you don't expect it is when ideas hit you.
Yeah, totally. And so as you kind of dove into working with yoga studios and learning more about what they were doing with their newsletters, like what sort of things were you discovering?
So I was discovering that there was so much low-hanging fruit to be picked, honestly, because a lot of yoga studios at the time and still today would send newsletters. So I decided very quickly to call the business No More Newsletters, because I think newsletters are a terribly ineffective way of doing marketing. And that's the thing that I started talking to people about. I said, obviously it costs some time for you as a studio owner, right, to write your newsletter. Some people would send it once a week, others once a month, others whenever they got to it, just like every 4 months, because it turns out that nobody really enjoys writing newsletters. And I said, well, if you don't enjoy it, do you at least know that you're getting something from your newsletter? Are you getting new students? Do your existing students enjoy reading your newsletters? Are you measuring what's happening to your business as a result of sending them? And people said, no, not really. I mean, I don't know. So
That's so funny. It's like, no, I'm just like doing this thing because I think I should.
because everybody else does it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is I said, I think there's a big opportunity here for you to improve. And rather than sending one mass email to everybody who has ever come in contact with your studio, right, which is current students, past students, people who are kind of in between. They come sometimes, but not very often. A visitor from out of town who took a class with you once, like rather than sending the same email every month to those people, which is work that you don't like doing and work that you don't know what it results in, and whether it results in any more business for you or whether it results in any of your students feeling better, being happier. Why don't we think about which emails should you be sending to which people at what time? Can we target this a little bit more? And it turns out that when I started doing that with yoga studios, they saw the results almost immediately.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's interesting having this conversation because I think that, anyone who's ever worked in like any sort of sales, I think knows that if you send out some sort of like mass email to a bunch of companies trying to get them interested as leads for like your product or service, they're pretty much not going to engage with it. Yet it's become kind of like this big thing to have a mailing list and to be sending out like a regular email. And I feel like it's not necessarily wrong, but it's like maybe we're just like missing what we should be doing with these emails we're collecting just a little bit. Is that sort of, am I on base with that?
Yeah, I think it all depends on your goal, right? So often I would ask a studio owner, what is your goal for the newsletter? And I mean, they wouldn't have any clearly articulated goals. Some people do, but a lot of people didn't. And I understand, because a lot of people who are yoga studio owners start out as yoga teachers. And they say, you know what, it'd be really fun to have my own studio, but they don't have a marketing background. They don't have a business background. They're not entrepreneur. Well, they are now, but they probably haven't been entrepreneurs in the past. So they're not, it's understandable that they haven't necessarily thought very much about what are we trying to achieve here. And so what ends up happening is people use newsletters as a way to inform their students of what's going on in their studio. So, hey, we have a new teacher. You should come check out their class. Or, hey, we're doing a new workshop, or we're organizing our first retreat. And these are all very cool things. And of course, you definitely want to let people know about that. But what happens is those things all get lumped into one big email, one newsletter, of which only a very small portion is perhaps relevant to like any given student who's reading that newsletter. And that's the thing that's kind of the problem, which is that it is not targeted and it is very impersonal.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. And so instead of sending out this like monthly gigantic newsletter, what are some alternatives? Like what are some strategies to help people engage a little bit more and be more personal and targeted?
So the thing that I always recommend is that people can actually save time and get better results by automating their email. And so automated email marketing is not a new thing anymore. It has been around for quite a long time. Yet I still see most yoga studios either not using it effectively or not using it at all. And what do I mean by automated emails? I just mean that you set up a system that knows what your students are doing. It knows when someone is about to take their first class. It knows when someone has bought a trial pass, because most yoga studios will have a trial pass, right? So it knows when students have a trial pass and it's about to expire. And in those moments, you can send those students the right email at the right time, right? You can say, hey, your trial pass is expiring. Would you like to sign up for a full membership now? Here's the plans. Here's a comparison between our plans. If you act fast, you get a discount, something like that. So, and the beautiful thing is, you can actually schedule these emails to go out, using software and go out to the right people at the right time automatically. So you just set it up once and then you forget about it, right? And it saves you time and it makes your students have a much better experience because now they're receiving emails that are coming to them and that feel appropriate for their sort of journey with your studio, as opposed to a newsletter which treats everybody the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you feel like there's benefit to sending these sort of like specific emails to somebody and then once they're kind of like a regular member, continuing with the regular newsletters, or what are sort of your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think if people are very keen to continue their newsletter, especially if they want to tell some interesting stories, then I always say that's totally fine, right? You just have to be really clear on what your goal is there. If your goal is I want more students through the door, right? I want to sell more memberships. I want to upsell workshops. I want to upsell retreats. Then for that, I would not recommend sending a newsletter. But and these are the goals that yoga studio owners often share with me, right? You work with yoga studios as well. I don't know what they're telling you, but I'm going to guess something similar.
Yeah, I mean, it's how can we get more people to try our classes, to get through the door, to sign up for workshops and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so then I will say newsletters are just not a great tool to do that. But if you want to tell stories, if you want to say, here's someone who came to our studio a few months ago or 6 months ago or 2 years ago or whatever, they're still with us, and look at their transformation. These are all the great things that have happened to them. Look what has happened as a result of their yoga practice with us. Then yeah, maybe you can send those in a newsletter. You could do like a student of the month thing. But that now you have a different goal, because you're it's more like building a story about your studio, right? And by the way, these are things you could also do in targeted automated emails. But if you're more focused on the financial side of things, the business side of things, getting more students, selling more memberships, then I would say just ditch those newsletters.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And so what kind of software do you kind of use to get this set up?
Yeah, this is actually probably the number one question I get. And
people are like, what is this magic? Tell me where I buy this magic that saves me time and effort and brings people in my studio.
Exactly. So of course it doesn't work that way. There are many good options, and I'll tell you about a few that I like to work with, but it's not a question, right? The important part is how you use software. It's not which software you use. Some of it will work better for you than others, but I would never tell every single yoga studio owner, you just have to use this particular type of software. It's going to be amazing for you, right? No, it's all about how you set it up. But one that I really like working with, for example, is called Namaste Lite. Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't.
Oh, interesting. So they are sort of a rebrand of an email service provider called Emma. And they're very focused on yoga studios. So Namaste Lite has a lot of built-in templates that are very helpful for yoga studio owners. And crucially, they connect with MindBody. So MindBody being, the software, I'm sure you've heard of this, that many, many, many studios use to manage their registrations, their classes, their events. And this particular email service provider integrates with MindBody. So you can do really, really cool things like, say, schedule an email to go out right after someone registers for their first class, right? And then in that email, you can be like, here's what you should bring to your first class. And that's the sort of email that people love to get.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that's when I was thinking about this, I was like, okay, so I know that there's like a ton of auto emails that you can send out through MindBody Online. I don't feel like their automated emails are like super, super like sleek and sexy, but they definitely they exist. And I feel like they serve some purposes. Like they can send out we miss you, we'd like to see you again, come back, use your pass is expiring, like a lot of really good sort of like administrative side stuff from like the studio owner, studio management side. But yeah, I hadn't heard of an email that like software that integrated with MindBody like that, because that's the kind of thing I think where people are like, okay, well, somebody signs up, then I have to pull these reports. I have to import them onto like my list in, MailChimp or whatever other software they're using, and then get them kind of onto that auto email flow and then hope that the emails go out at the right time. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. And hope is never a good strategy, as we know.
Yeah. You like assume the software is doing its thing, but you like never really know. So
yeah. And so, you could do a lot worse than using the built-in MindBody emails, to be honest. Like if that's what you're doing right now, that's, we'd have to talk to see whether it makes sense to use a more specialized piece of software. It's a good place to start, but certainly you can get quite advanced with things. So one of the things I always like to talk about is to give an example of what can go wrong when you send a newsletter, right? So let's say you're running a workshop, right? Workshops are fun often for yoga studios, because it's different, right, than classes, and you can probably work with people a little bit more one-on-one. And so you have a workshop coming up, and let's say you send in your newsletter, you mention an upcoming workshop. pregnancy yoga, just an example. There's a workshop for expectant moms. Okay. And it costs a certain amount of money, and some people sign up. Now the workshop is a month from now, and then 3 weeks later you send another newsletter, and your workshop hasn't sold out yet. So you think, well, I think I'll just give a discount now because the workshop hasn't sold out yet. The instructor has to be there anyway. It'd be nice to get a few more people, so I'm just going to lower the price. I'm just going to give like a 20% discount on it right now, and see if I can entice a few more people to sign up for my workshop. But if you do this in a newsletter, right, then everybody's going to see that, including the people who have already bought this class before, signed up for the workshop at the higher price. Mm-hmm. So now you see that this is not a fun, way. Like if I'm one of your students and I sign up for a workshop at full price, and I've seen yoga studios do this, right? And then you get another newsletter where suddenly the price is low. You're like, wait a second, like why did I pay a higher price for the same workshop? Mm-hmm. And this is what happens when you send, newsletters, which are just mass emails, right? So the alternative is that you use a specialized email app such as Namaste Lite, and you can get really granular. You can say, email this particular group of people who I think might be interested in this workshop based on whatever classes they've taken in the past, and invite them to join the workshop. And then of those people who got those automated emails, and that I've invited to the workshop, but that have not booked yet, 2 weeks later, send them another email and say, hey, we noticed that you haven't signed up for this workshop yet. Let me give you 20% off. Are you interested now? Do you see the difference?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, just completely different vibe. So Namaste Lite integrates with MindBody Online. If somebody's listening, but they don't use MindBody, do you still feel like it's like a good software to be using, or do you recommend something different if somebody's using like Wellness Living or Schedulicity or something like that, if they're like a smaller studio?
Yeah, that all depends on whether there's any integration with an email marketing or with an email service provider at all. A lot of the smaller softwares in particular will not offer an integration. Mm-hmm. And then you're kind of stuck. Then it's hard to then use a dedicated email service provider to send these emails because you don't have the data in there, right? You don't know when did someone last take a class, or which classes have they taken, or what is their membership status. And so in that case, you're better off. Some of these apps that you mentioned will have I don't know about these two in particular, but some of them will have some email functionality built in, just like MindBody does, right? And in that case, you're better off doing that. But even if you cannot do that, you can still do some work on your own using an email service provider. And you could maybe have one of your admin assistants keep track of who is a current member in your email service provider. Yes, this takes a little bit more work. Ideally, you'd love to automate it. But then you can at least email all of your current members, right? Or all of the people who you have on your email list and who had a membership with your studio in the past. So you can still have some of that same functionality, just not in as granular of a way if the integration's not there.
Right. Gotcha. So it's kind of looking at like if you use a different type of, I guess, like software for your studio or just for your business in general, then it's looking at like what integration capability it has before kind of picking that next software.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that, I come across MindBody most of all, but I know that some people are not fans of MindBody. So let's just put it that way. So for those people, it would really depend on what software are they using and which integrations exist,
Yeah. I've been a studio manager for 4 years now, and we use MindBody at both studios that I work with. And I think MindBody is a really, really great platform. I think that it's a little pricey, and I think that people like to hate on it when it doesn't work properly because it is pricey. So I see like all sorts of different stuff though in my private Facebook community. And I think usually if people aren't using MindBody Online, it's because they're small. If you're a small studio in Canada, for example, $150 a month is that's actually like a decent expense. Like that's going to cost you about 200, maybe a little bit over that Canadian dollars. And if you're not bringing in that many students, that can be like a little bit challenging. I do feel like there's something that's totally different about going to a yoga studio that has like a really sleek organization system where it's really easy to sign up versus like when you go in and everything's like on sticky notes or paper and it's like cash only and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I do think that
No,
like
no.
having that software kind of does step it up a little bit.
Yeah, and it depends on what sort of studio you are right now and what sort of studio you want to be, right? So I've worked with very small studios where I said, look, to be honest, like at your level of scale, it's just not worth it to use automated email marketing.
Mhm.
Still don't necessarily advocate a newsletter, but some studios are literally small enough where the ROI, the return on investment, is just better if you like manually email people. If you or one of your employees just sits down once a week and just email some students, be like, yo, we haven't seen you in 2 months. What's going on? And maybe that doesn't sound so fun, but at a small scale, that's probably the more efficient thing to do. Whereas I've also worked with like bigger studios where no way, they could do that, but it would take a lot of work, and it makes much more sense to make that investment and automate the email marketing, use a bigger platform like Mindbody, as you're saying, right, and set this up. Because if people are some studios that I've worked with will get like 50 to 70 new students interested in their studio every week. Well, if you're getting that many new people, I'm sure there's bigger ones, but if you're getting that many new people every week, you cannot approach all of them individually. It's much better to send an email being like, oh, so great that you're interested in our studio, or that you're coming to your first class. Like, here's what we recommend that you bring to your first class. Or if they haven't registered for a class yet, they say, here are 3 classes that we recommend for beginners. Are you looking for more of a workout or more for like something to de-stress, or what? Pick this one or pick that one, and just set that up automatically. Because once you have that scale, it really becomes worth automating it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. That definitely makes sense. Is there, and this is kind of like maybe a gray area type question, but how do you kind of determine like when it's worth the ROI to be on this like automated email software? Like, when do you kind of make the leap of like, okay, this is like too much for me to just be emailing on my own. Like, I really need to automate. Like, I think that there's kind of these like when you're doing really well and you have a lot of students, and when you're like at the beginning starting out, but I feel like there's a lot of gray area kind of in the middle.
Sure. Yeah. There's not one number. That makes sense. That would be really nice. If your revenue is this much,
You have X amount of students you need to automate.
yeah, but certainly if you start to realize that, wait a second, I really do need some software like Mindbody. It doesn't have to be Mindbody specifically, right? But there's so much going on, and I need to keep track of everything that's going on. There's no way I could do it by hand. I definitely have not met all of the people who come to my yoga studio face to face, right? At that point, I would really start thinking about, what automated email marketing can I do? And it doesn't mean that you immediately have to go and set up the most sophisticated system possible, but start with the low-hanging fruit.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Just kind of looking at like, what's working, what's not, how much time you're spending on stuff. I guess most people probably know, especially from like a studio owner, studio management position, when you're like if you're spending like 4 hours every day emailing students, like that's out of control.
Yeah, I once had a studio owner tell me that like she worked with a different marketing agency, and they told her, to get new students, we really think that you should go just call people up. So anybody who's ever been to your studio but who's not currently a member, I just want you to call them up one by one, and make them an offer. And so she did that for a while, and then she realized, I hate this. Like the last thing she wanted to do after working a full week at her studio, and coming home in the evening, was then going and calling people who had come to her studio once, right?
Mm-hmm.
She said, like, I want to hang out with my husband. So, and at that point is a point where I say, okay, you can use software to solve this problem, right? You can set up a automated email that goes out to people who took a class once. Then after, let's say 4 weeks or 2 months or whatever you want to make it, that's probably a good time period, somewhere in between there, 4 to 8 weeks, say, hey, you came to this first class a while ago, but we haven't seen you back. How did you, would you like to come again? Why haven't you come again? And there could be all sorts of reasons for that, but you can have that email go out automatically. Sure, maybe if you get a personal phone call, you'll respond a little bit differently. But at some point, your ROI is just going to be better if you do that automatically for all of the people who came and took a class with you once, as opposed to, trying to make some phone calls. But, there's just too many people to call everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That completely makes sense. And so, once people are kind of, set up, you've got a software, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. What are the automated emails that we should be sending out? Like what do we actually need to set up with this?
Yeah, so there are 5 emails that I think every yoga studio should be sending, automated emails. So let's start there.
Okay.
And by the way, I also have a free guide on my website that people can go and I can mention that later and just reread this, but I'll go through now.
Okay, awesome. I'll make sure that there's a link for that too, in case anyone's like walking, driving, and they're like, oh no, I'm going to miss it all.
Yeah, please do not write things down if you're driving.
Yeah, definitely not.
So the first one I think is very simple, and that is how to choose your first class. So often you can actually get a potential student's email address, even if they have not yet taken a class. So I think most yoga studio owners end up with students' email addresses once they've registered for a class, because someone finds your studio somehow, through Google or through word of mouth, or, and then they register for a class and then you ask for their email address. Okay. But actually you can start even earlier, because if someone does hit your website through Google or through a friend or whatever, I would say the very first thing they should see on your website is something that says, is this your first time? Leave your email address with us, and we'll send you an email that will tell you exactly which class to pick. And that should be really, in people's face when they visit your website, right? And then send that email. It's, you know exactly what to say as a yoga studio owner to help someone pick your first class. You say, are you looking for more of a yin style? Are you looking for more of a workout, a flow style class, right? I mean, yoga studio owners know how to do this. And just make sure that that's targeted to beginners, someone who's like a first-time student, or at least a first-time student at your studio, right? Put a really big button in there in that email that says, book my first class now. And maybe talk a little bit about how your yoga studio is maybe different from other yoga studios, right? So that's the number one email that I would say is how to choose your first class.
Okay, that sounds good. And so I guess this sort of depends on like the software you're using, but this would be like integrated with people who just have maybe like never been to the studio. Like it's just kind of like an email that's like going out to people who are sort of like brand new, like not people who have been before.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and ideally what you would do is this system would be integrated, right? So that when someone does sign up for a class, when they do attend one of your classes, and normally they already end up in your system, right? That's connected. So now the system knows, right? This person has actually taken a class. Actually, the second email that I always recommend that people send comes even before this. Is say once someone has registered for that class, is just shoot them a quick little email, tell them what to bring. You probably have a frequently asked questions section on your website. Most yoga studios have this, and one of the questions is, "What should I bring?" Right? It's like sometimes you have to bring a mat, sometimes you don't. Towel, right? Clean clothes if you have a shower or anything like that. Yeah, but just send this automatically. You can write this email in 5 minutes and set it up and get it ready to go, and then it'll run forever. And one of the really nice things about doing this is you're sending the right email to the right person at the right time. So someone who just registered for their first class, they're going to love hearing from you if you're giving them useful information like this. They may not necessarily want to receive your newsletter yet, though.
Right. So it's like the difference between like thinking about somebody who's just signed up for their first yoga class and they're kind of, having that sort of like a little bit of panic mode about like, what do I wear? Do I need a mat? What is it going to be like?
How awkward is this going to be?
Yeah, totally. And it's way more relevant for them to get an email that's like the things you need to bring to your first yoga class versus like, check out our latest workshops.
Yeah, exactly. They're probably thinking, what do I wear to a yoga class, right? Like, how much am I going to sweat?
Right.
and they're probably a lot more concerned with those things, or like, where in the class do I sit? I think is something that a lot of first time people always wonder, right?
Yeah,
So.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like as like a yogi and like a yoga teacher, somebody who's like feels very comfortable in yoga studio spaces, even ones that I like don't practice at regularly. It's always like a reminder when somebody like puts their mat the wrong way or something like that. Like they line it up the direction of the teacher and it's like, oh no, like it goes the other way. Like the teacher's just like that. So they can demonstrate and somebody's like, oh, I had no idea. Like I'm just like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. It's like a reminder that, not everyone feels super comfortable in that space. It's kind of like me going into like a CrossFit gym.
No, I've
Like,
actually never been in a CrossFit gym, but I've biked past them and seen them, push those big tractor tires. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the type of thing it's intimidating. Like you walk in and everyone's kind of just like doing their thing. It's like when you walk in a studio and people are talking or they're stretching or they've like set themselves up in a restorative pose that they love for the first like couple minutes before the teacher starts.
They're meditating a little bit with their eyes closed.
Yeah, I feel like, CrossFitters are doing kind of their version of that. And it's like, as that new person, you walk in and you're kind of just like standing in the corner. Like, I don't know what to do with my hands. So,
yeah. And so this is how you delight people, right? So basically send them useful information at the time that they want to hear it. So the thing that I always say is you should kill your newsletter, right? I say no more newsletters, because what happens when you send newsletters, most of the information is not going to be relevant to most people that you're sending it to, right? Maybe for any given recipient of your newsletter, only a very small portion is going to be relevant. So what are you doing? Like, what message are you sending? You're basically training people to ignore your future emails, because after they get 3 newsletters from you, or maybe after they get 1 newsletter from you that they find totally irrelevant, like they're not going to be inclined to open your future emails.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And so those are the first 2. What are the next couple of emails that people should be sending?
Yeah, it's really a very logical progression. So after someone takes their first class, send them a post first class email. Just say, hey, so-and-so, how was your first class? That can be like the subject line of the email, right? And what I always like to do is add a survey. Add like a really big button, like make it like orange or something, like put a really big button that stands out and it says, answer a few questions about my first class, and just emphasize this is going to take less than 2 minutes, like this will be really fast. And just ask, did the teacher give you good guidance, right? How did you like the class? Like, how would you rate it? Would you come back? How did you find the intensity level of the class? And was there anything that was unclear to you as a first-time student, right? And, a lot of people are not going to fill out the survey. That's cool. That's just the way it is. But some people will. And I've done this very successfully with certain yoga studios that have gotten, hundreds of responses since we set this up from their first-time students. And it's very useful feedback, right? It's like, oh, this class was a little bit too difficult for me as a beginner. Okay, that's great. So next time you're going to recommend a different class to a beginner. So it's an amazingly easy way, because you set it up once and then you're essentially getting constant feedback on your classes from new students.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what types of questions do you usually recommend putting in that type of survey?
How would you rate this class on a scale of 1 to 5? Did you find the teacher's instruction easy to understand? Would you recommend this class to someone else? Would you come back to the studio? If not, why not? Right? I think those are the basics. And there's some other things you could do. I guess a good one, something that I think yoga studio owners find interesting is, did you find the room? Did you have enough space in the room? But what I also find is that a lot of people will say, well, it'd be nice if we had more space. And then the studio owner says, yeah, I know, but we're not going to put fewer students in the room because I need to hit some revenue.
Right.
But yeah, if you're concerned about that, you can certainly ask that also.
Yeah. So I guess making the questions like pretty relevant, because you don't want to take like too much of their time, and making sure that there's stuff that's like really going to be beneficial to you, so that when you look at it, you can actually like take action on the stuff that you're getting back from them.
Oh yeah, exactly. And make like try and have no required questions, maybe only the rated from 1 to 5 question or something like that. Make it as easy as possible for people to answer some of the questions, because everybody is busy. People don't want to take the time out of their day usually. But if you promise, look, this will just be 2 minutes, it would be super valuable to us. And, you'll get some people responding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that idea. We've done surveys with both the studios that I work with, and it's been really beneficial to get that feedback on both ends, and has helped make some like really important changes. So I think it's always like, we don't want to inconvenience people, but I think if you say it's like 2 minutes and it genuinely is 2 minutes, I think, people who don't want to do it won't do it, and people who are interested will do it, and they'll be happy to leave you that information. So yeah, I really like that idea. I think that's great.
Yeah, and you can also ask people to leave a public review. So I know that to a lot of studios, this really matters. For example, you could say, if you particularly enjoyed our class, click here to leave your review on Google Maps of our studio, right? Because a lot of studios, if you go look at if you go look on Google Maps, they'll have 68 5-star reviews. And this is just great marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's yeah, I mean, I've done something similar, I guess, with my podcast, like just asked people kind of like, just occasionally, not super often, but just like, hey, if you enjoy my podcast, can you go rate and review it? Like, it's really helpful for me.
Right.
So it's not like consistently in their face, but there's always people who will just kind of not engage with it. But then there's people who are like, oh yeah, I never thought to do that. Like, I'd love to. So I think that's really beneficial. We've done the same thing with one of the studios that I work with, like just kind of put an occasional call out for, hey, if you're enjoying the studio, can you review us on Google? Here's the link. And it always results in a couple people going and leaving those reviews, which is super, super helpful, especially since that studio is only about a year old.
Yeah, especially for a new studio, definitely. If you're looking, if you go on Google Maps and you're like, which yoga studios are there in this city, and you're probably more likely to go to one of the ones that has a lot of positive reviews than to one of the ones that has only 6 reviews, right? Because it might be the owner has 6 of their friends. So
yeah, no, absolutely, I completely agree. And so moving forward with those other automated emails, so I guess we've talked about 3 of them. What are the last 2 that you recommend?
Yep. So the first 3 were how to choose your first class, what to bring to your first class, and how was your first class. And the last 2 that I recommend are, first, your trial class is expiring, which is one that's pretty simple. You can, for example, if you're using the app I mentioned, Namaste Light, you can do this 1 week before a student's trial pass expires and send, okay, your trial pass is about to expire. Would you like to sign up for a membership? Here's the membership plans that we have. OPS, if you sign up in the next 3 days, you get a 10% discount or whatever, some time-based incentive, right? And of course, the discount is optional. I find that it often works, but certainly sending that email saying, hey, it's time to sign up for a full membership now, that's just a super valuable email to send. And then the last email, number 5, is the you haven't taken a class in a while email. So you'll get people, either they used to be members and now they haven't come in a while, maybe they canceled their membership, or maybe it's people who didn't have a membership, but they got a 10 class pass or something like that, and they came pretty consistently, but then they haven't been in a while. And you can set this up. You can sort of target this in the email service app. And maybe after 4 weeks, say, hey, you used to come regularly, but we haven't seen you in a while. What's up? And you can make them an offer if you like, or you can just make it a question and invite a response and say, would you reply and let us know why you're no longer coming? They could be like, well, I've moved out of town. But it could also be like, oh, it's great that you mentioned this. I totally forgot about it. Yeah, I registered for another class, right? Or it could be like, well, to be honest, I find your membership's too expensive. But either way, that's really useful feedback for you as a studio owner.
Right. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. That's something both the studios I work with have, the advanced Mind Body Online, and the marketing retention with that gives you the option to set up. They call them the We Miss You emails. And it's pretty much the same thing. You can set it up for, I'm assuming Namaste Light works the same way. After X period, after X weeks or X months of them not coming, you can send this email, and you can send it on a frequency of oh, we haven't heard from them for another 3 months, send it again. And you have the option to send a promo code and that sort of thing. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier too, right? You could do worse than just using those built-in emails in MindBody. They're a little basic compared to what a dedicated email service provider is going to do for you, but you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, I pulled up Namaste Light after you mentioned it. And I think, for a lot of people, it's kind of looking at like what the best pricing option is, just because like you do have to pay more to have the advanced part of MindBody Online, which might be good for some studios with those features. Whereas with others, if you are a smaller studio or you have a smaller list, Namaste Light might be a better option. Or, again, MindBody Online's emails are not super, super sexy looking. So maybe the aesthetic is something that's more important. But
yeah, but it's really great that you bring up the aesthetic, because actually so I don't know why, but I found that a lot of yoga studio owners care a lot about the aesthetics of their automated emails, or of any emails that they send to their students. And of course that's fine, but I will say that the aesthetics are not super important. Like, it's much more important that you send the right email to the right person at the right time, and that you delight people with your emails because they're useful and valuable, and because you're offering something, right? That is much more important than having a spiffy background or your logo, or of course it's nice when it looks a little bit better, but those should be secondary concerns.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Content is probably the most important thing. You might get a like, oh, this is a pretty email from somebody, but at the end of the day, if the content sucks, you're not going to get somebody back. I think too, the other thing that I've sort of heard that I'd be curious to get your opinion on is, there's, I guess, just thinking about like MailChimp, there's the option for like lots of different photos and templates and layouts and that sort of thing. And I think it seems like a lot of people are kind of just going back to like basic, like just what you would typically write like your friend in an email, like you and I's email communications back and forth were nothing that was like super aesthetic or fancy. It was just email communication. And that does the trick, right? Like we don't need to add like a big banner at the top or add a bunch of photos to kind of get the message across. So do you kind of agree with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you are so right. So when you send automated emails, or even just mass emails, like, people know that you're not talking to them one-on-one, right? Like, you're not going to fool anybody. But still, when you make it as conversational as possible, your emails, right? So when you're using text and you're writing in a way that you would speak to one of your students if they were standing at your reception desk, right? That just creates a really calm and friendly way to interact, and people will love it. Yeah, I don't know if everybody gets, but I think everybody's familiar with sort of newsletters from very big corporations, right? That feel very impersonal, and clearly there's a whole marketing department that had meetings over what they should say in their newsletter. So you definitely don't want to come across like that. That's why I said you can just be like, hey Amanda, we noticed that you took your first class yesterday. How did you like it? We really value getting your feedback, because we always want to make sure that we have a really great experiences for all of our students, for all of our yogis. If you have 2 minutes, would you please fill out the survey? And just like that, like, even if you email that and you don't add any photos, right? You don't add any logos or any fancy schmancy things. It's still going to do the job.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's actually kind of interesting. It just made me think about, I purchased like a face roller a couple of months ago. It's super random. It was like, you can buy these like face rollers. They're usually made of like some sort of rock. Anyways, this one was jade. And basically the idea is like, you just kind of roll your face with it, and the stones will usually stay a certain temperature. So it's really helpful for like inflammation and stuff. It gets like the blood flowing in your face. Anyways, the reason I'm telling you about this random purchase that I made is because the email that I got from the person was just this really basic, like, hey, thank you so much for your purchase. Like, click here to review it, or something like that. And then it had the person's name at the bottom. And I actually like hit reply and was like, thank you so much. Like, I love my product so far. And then I was like, oh, it's so cool that I got that personalized email. And then I was like, no, that wasn't a personalized email. But it tricked me into it because it was just so basic. Like, it literally looked like the person had sat and been like, hey, Amanda, thank you so much for purchasing this. We really value opinion. You can click here if you want to review it. Like, hope you're enjoying it. X person who made it. So I feel like that's kind of the concept we're talking about, right? Is like getting people feeling like you're writing them a personalized email.
Exactly. And it's just all about how you want to present yourself as a brand to your students. And so, if you're a yoga studio owner, whether you like it or not, you're in the marketing business, you're in the branding business. So you got to decide how you want to come across to people. And there's not one way that's best. I know of some studios that I've worked with that will send emails like this, and they'll sign it with the names of the studio owners. Maybe there's two, and they'll sign every email with their names and have their pictures. And that can work really well, especially if you're not super big as a studio, right? Or maybe there's sort of one person who's in charge of the marketing, and you can have that person's name at the bottom of the email. But either way, whether you do that or not, just talking to people like you would talk to people in real life, I think is absolutely the best way to have people be happy to receive emails from you, as opposed to thinking, oh no, not another newsletter.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% understand that. And so one thing that I am curious about, because you hear like all sorts of opinions on this, and a friend actually kind of brought this up with me the other day. She's starting out a new sort of yoga business as a yoga teacher, and she was like, just kind of curious, like why I should be getting gathering emails. Like she's like, I kind of thought like newsletters were like an old school thing that I didn't need to do, and that I would be fine with like just my social media. So I'm curious, like why is email marketing valuable, whether or not it's like, killing your newsletter, doing something that's more strategic, like we've been talking about. Like, why is there value in email marketing over something that's like a bit like quote unquote sexier than something like Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought this up, because this is a question I get a lot. Because if you go on Instagram, every single yoga studio has an Instagram account, or at least all the ones that I've ever run into have an Instagram account, and they're posting all sorts of things on there, and not just Instagram, also Facebook, right? Anyway, social media. And, Instagram is probably a lot more hip than email marketing. Email marketing is not at all sexy. And I think that wasn't helped by, was it last year now, when the European Union came out with its new privacy regulations?
Oh, like the GDPR. That was like a nightmare for every single person ever.
Exactly. And so that really did not help the case for email marketing, because I think a lot of people were left with the impression that, oh, I am not allowed to do email marketing now, or it is no longer worth it, or something like that. Whereas actually it's totally not the case. There's, people in the industry, for example, one of the email service providers, that's a big one, just did another research project on email marketing automation and looked at the return on investment. And they have interesting numbers. They say, for every dollar you spend, you get a $38 return on your investment in email marketing. Obviously, that's an industry average under certain conditions, and that's not necessarily what you as a studio are going to get, right? But one thing is super clear, is that there is a very high positive return on investment if you do the email marketing and the automated part of it right. And on platforms like Instagram, you can show, pictures from your classes, and that might get people interested. But it's actually very difficult to get people to take action on a platform like that, whereas people do take actions when you email them. So if you send someone an email and says, your trial pass is expiring, but here's some of our memberships, right? We think this one is best for you right now, or we think one of these two is best for you right now. If you subscribe, or like if you sign up in the next 7 days or next 3 days or whatever, you get a 10% discount. That stuff works. Like, people respond to this. Email is a very good way to sell things still, and it really has been. It just doesn't necessarily get the attention that a platform like Instagram gets, because it's less visual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just like kind of, like what we said, like it's just not like sending emails doesn't feel like very, very sexy. Like it doesn't feel like the same as posting a really cool photo. But I've heard, I don't have like over 10,000 followers, so I don't get like the link here in Instagram stories or anything. But I've talked with a couple of different yoga teachers who do have pretty big followings, and all of them that I've asked this specific question to have said that, their actual like, so lots of people will swipe up and look, but it's not that common that people actually like click through and make a purchase.
Exactly. It's been my experience as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, definitely interesting. And I think that I still feel like, and it sounds like you do the same, like I still feel like there's value to having access to somebody's inbox. And I feel like it is something that you need to kind of, treat like it's sacred, because, we all get so many emails these days that if you, like you said, send an email that somebody opens up that they feel like maybe excited about, and then they read it and it's not valuable to them, that's an immediate unsubscribe probably, because we are all too busy to be on everyone's newsletters and read the emails all the time and be engaged with them. So I think it is, treat your people's emails like they're sacred and make sure you're sending them stuff of value is kind of what I'm taking away from this.
Yeah, and this is why you got to kill your newsletter, because that's so impersonal, right? You're sending it to everybody. You're training people that you're sending them confusing emails with a lot of information that's not relevant to them, right? You're training people to ignore your future emails, and you're going to get a lot of people unsubscribing if you do that. But if you send automated emails, targeted emails, right? If you're emailing the right person at the right time about the right thing, right? People are going to be happy to receive emails from you because they know that every time you send them something, just like you just said, Amanda, you're offering some value, right? And that's just something that people will appreciate, and they're going to recognize that you're going through the effort of, giving them value, and they're going to reward you for that, whether that's by, signing up for your memberships or retreats or whatever, or just generally feeling better about your business and leaving a better review and telling more friends about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I know we've talked a lot about kind of like the benefits of this, or the ways to kind of go about this as a yoga studio. Do you have any tips for yoga teachers? So say if somebody's like a teacher, they teach at a couple different studios, they are gathering email addresses from their students. They're probably like on a smaller scale. Like, can you kind of implement this, like kill your newsletter in sort of a similar fashion just as a yoga teacher?
So if you're in that situation, I would really think that the ROI on automating stuff is not going to be there. You're probably not going to have thousands of people on an email list in that case, but I do think in that case, it would be very worth, as that teacher, to just stay in touch with the people who attend your classes. And not only email them whenever you're teaching a workshop, being like, I'm teaching a workshop, because now people like only ever hear from you when you're promoting, right? But also email them with other valuable things, or ask them a question, being like, hey, thank you so much for attending my classes, right? Or having attended a class or whatever. Can you just tell me, like, what was the thing that you like most about my classes? And I ask you because I'm thinking of teaching this new class, blah, blah, blah. So essentially you're starting conversations, right? And that's the thing. You're starting conversations and inviting people to reply to you with what they think, and making them feel involved in what you are doing as a teacher.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's kind of like using the concepts that we've been talking about, but maybe doing it on a smaller scale. So not necessarily like investing in an automated software, but more looking at like, somebody signs up for a private with you, like maybe it's sending out that email of, maybe you have like an email template that you just kind of customize as like what to expect or what they need to bring for their session, or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, you can have some of those emails just, pasted in a notes app or something, right? And then like copy them from there and tailor them a little bit to people. But I certainly wouldn't go and set up sophisticated software for this, because it's probably just not worth it. Unless you somehow, as an independent yoga teacher, get so much business that it becomes worth it, in which case, good for you. And then, you just open your own studio.
Yeah, definitely nothing wrong with that. Do you still feel like, so I think you kind of answered this, but so do you still feel like the kill your newsletter kind of concept applies as a yoga teacher, in terms of like, we shouldn't be sending out these like generic sort of monthly mass emails, or
Yeah.
can you do it in a way that's more like, maybe on a regular basis you're sending something that's more personalized?
No, I mean, so for those sorts of things, for the, if you're an independent yoga teacher and you're just sending out those monthly emails, I think that for that sort of stuff, like Instagram is really good, just for keeping people up to date on what's going on with you, and what kind of classes you're teaching now. Give people some behind the scenes things, or maybe like, oh, I'm preparing for a workshop. What do you guys think of this or this? Asking them a question, like an Instagram poll or something. But really, for that building the following, right? You could do it using email, but there are probably better tools for it. But when it comes to things like inviting people to hire you one-on-one, if you want to do like private classes, for example, then email, I think, is a very good means, because as you mentioned before, Amanda, people don't really tend to buy on social media very much, right? Whereas if you send them an email and you make them an offer, they're much more likely to take it seriously and actually take action.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's just kind of being like using sort of the concepts we've been talking about just sort of in a different way, and just kind of looking again, I think it comes back to like your intention, like what you're trying to achieve, and then figuring out how you can kind of connect people in a more personal way.
Yeah, and can you do it efficiently yet not in like a mass way, like a personalized way? And that's really the key.
Yeah, definitely. I've played around a ton with sort of different email lists and different things that I've sent people with my MBOM list, and sending at different frequencies, sending different things. And I've definitely found that, like, if people sign up for my emails, they seem to like sort of a more personal touch. Like if I just send out an email that's like, hey, buy this product or buy this service, like it's just way less frequent. Like people just don't really open it, and then there's way less clicks and that sort of thing. But I find if it's like a little bit more personal, like more of like, hey, this is what I'm up to, it seems like people are a bit more engaged. They actually will respond, and that sort of thing. That's been like my personal experience with it.
Yeah, totally. And like you said, the intention is so important. People will smell it from a mile away if your intention is just to sell stuff. If the only time you ever email them is to sell something, I mean, people will know.
Definitely, for sure. Amazing. Do you have any other, business tips for yoga teachers, yoga studios, kind of around what we've been talking about today?
Yeah, so the one thing I guess that we haven't covered yet that I always recommend people, and I'm not necessarily an expert on this, right? But is pick a niche. Differentiate yourself from, if you're a teacher, from other teachers, if you're a studio, from other studios, right? Don't be like all the other studios. Be different in some way. Have the be brave enough to appeal to a small segment of the market rather than to try to appeal to everybody else. And I feel like this is very common business advice, yet I see very many people not implementing it, but it is so worth it. Just in Amsterdam, there's one studio, and they say, our yoga classes are the hardest ones in town. They're more like fitness. It's like you get the best workout in our classes. Oh, that's true. From all the classes that I've been to, that's totally true, and that's their thing. They're not going for a more personal approach where the teacher greets everybody by name when they come in. That's fine. That's their choice, but it works for them. It appeals as to a certain type of student, attracts a certain type of student, and probably doesn't really appeal to other people, but that's fine. Decide how you're going to be different.
Yeah, I really like that advice, and that's definitely something that I tell people as well. I think that one thing that people do struggle with that is kind of trying to figure out like who their niche is. Like I think that in terms of the way that yoga teacher trainings are currently structured, is like you learn pretty like high level generic information, which, I mean, 200 hours is really not enough time to dive into all the nitty gritty of being a yoga teacher. So it's not to like the fault of anyone leading teacher trainings. I think it's just the fact that like 200 hours is just not enough time. And then people start just teaching, and you just teach for studios. And I think when you just get classes at other people's studios, it's kind of the nature of like, it takes a while to kind of find your niche a little bit. So yeah, I guess that's sort of my like thoughts around it. But I think people kind of just struggle with that initial, like, who is my audience? I have no idea. I've never done this before.
Yeah, they can ask people, right? That's the simplest thing, is just ask people, what did you like about my classes? And you could even say compared with other classes you've taken before.
Yeah.
Let your students answer for you.
Yeah, I love that idea. And that's actually, I think, the third time in the last couple of weeks on a podcast interview that somebody said, just talk to your people. Just have conversations with them. And it's I said this on like the last time I had this conversation with somebody, like it's this really basic sort of obvious piece of advice, but I feel like it's one of those like, why am I not doing that type of pieces of advice where you're like, oh, it's like so simple, it's so obvious, yet it's this thing that we're like, oh, is it really that easy to kind of like figure out our niche based on just having conversations with people and finding like, what do you like about my classes? Why are you coming? what are some things that you'd like to like work on with me?
Yeah.
So yeah, but sometimes I think, and this is kind of, I think, tying everything we've talked about together is, simple is better. Sometimes we don't need to complicate things too much.
Right. Very true.
Amazing. Is there anything else that you want to share today before we wrap up?
I would just like to encourage people to head over to grab their free PDF. That's about it.
Okay, awesome. And where can they go to find that?
So we talked about the 5 automated emails that every yoga studio should be sending. And maybe we could put a little asterisk and say, once you hit a certain number of students, so probably not if you only have 10 students, but for all of those yoga studios who, have at least some size, I would say, go grab that free PDF. It's over at nomorenewsletters.com/mbom. So that's nomorenewsletters.com/mbom. It's free. It will take them very little time to set it up, and it will just simply help them sell more memberships, workshops, retreats.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation, Peter. It's definitely got my mind going in terms of some creative things that I can help the studios that I work with on, and just thinking about, newsletters in sort of a different way, like as non-newsletters, as you say. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you making time to chat with me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Amanda. It was a pleasure.
All right. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Peter from No More Newsletters. Make sure you go check them out at nomorenewsletters.com and just think about how this might relate to you, your business, your yoga studio, the yoga studios that you work with, etc., etc. As always, you can find show notes on the website at mbomyoga.com. You can find me on social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. You can join the private Facebook community at Yoga Business Badasses. So just search that in the search bar, and then you can come on in. And we've been talking about insurance this week, which has been really, really fun and just an interesting topic. And our topics vary each week. Sometimes it's more about teaching. Sometimes it's more tangible, specific things like business. Sometimes it's that in between sort of confusing stuff like sales and marketing. But if you want to be in a group of like-minded yoga teachers, you are definitely invited and welcome to the group. So it's Yoga Business Badasses on Facebook. And we still have a few spots left in our yoga teacher retreat that's coming up in November in Costa Rica. So I am doing that with Meghan Pherrill from Balance by Meghan. And we're going to be in Nusara, Costa Rica at Bodhi Tree Yoga Resort. It's absolutely breathtaking location, and it's going to be a really fun week. We are obviously going to do yoga. We've got business workshops. We're going to have a beach day, a waterfall hike, lots of space for collaboration and community. So we want to bring yoga teachers from all around the world together and kind of take away that loneliness that you can feel as a yoga teacher. We want to get together in person and have, just conversation and good vibes and hangout time to brainstorm, relax, get to know each other, and just be in a group of like-minded people. So if that's something that sounds of interest to you, you can learn more at mbomyoga.com/retreats, or to go directly to the booking page on WeTravel, you can go to bit.ly.com/yoga teacher retreat CR. Of course, if you have any questions about anything, just shoot me an email, info@mbomyoga.com. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.